Entrepreneur, author, and financial consultant Mark Bernstein helps high-performing entrepreneurial business owners create a vision for the future and follow through on their goals and intentions. Ange Honorato is a business growth strategist who blends psychology and business together to create conscious leaders and business owners who impact the world. Founders Forum is a radio show podcast sharing the real stories behind entrepreneurship as founders discover more about themselves while providing valuable lessons and some fun and entertainment for you. Now, here's Mark and Ange.
Good morning, America. Good morning, Philadelphia. We are here live on WWDB for the first time in several weeks on Founders Forum. So good morning, Ange.
Good morning, Mark. It's good to be back in the studio.
Thank you. Good morning. Same. Good to be here with you. Good morning, Gene.
Good morning.
And we'll introduce Gene in a moment. And, first of all, cheers to St. Jude, the commercial that was on right before we came on, because that's a big charity of mine and something recently played in their golf tournament. And it's a great charity, obviously. It does great things for children. Speaking of helping people, the thing on my mind this morning, Ange, is Morocco, because my daughter lives there, and she just missed the earthquake because of 2 canceled flights. Otherwise, she would have been there in Rabat, in the capital, not in Marrakesh, which is closer to the Atlas Mountains where the event occurred. But obviously, there's a lot of people in need there. So it's interesting because she has an economic research project she's working on there, economic development research, that basically they're having to completely rejigger the whole thing because the zones that she was going to start working in are basically destroyed. It's very sad. So, and then by coincidence, a family friend of ours have a son we know very well, who's stationed with the State Department in Budapest, and his areas of concern are Europe and Africa. So they flew him and one other person, that's our U.S. delegation, the two of them, to Morocco, who kind of scout out what kind of aid's needed. It looks like Morocco, King Mohammed, for some reason, was resisting foreign aid, but now it sounds like they're accepting it. So I think you're seeing a lot of countries run in there to help with what's going on. So with all the bad news you read every day, there's good news that when things like this happen and the world seems to rush to help, and it's always a good sign. It's also reminding me of another charity event my company's having. There's a company called Aerial Recovery that are like ex-special troops guys who have had a tough time adapting to the world, who are sort of retrained, rehabilitated to do special operations in disasters like this, man-made disasters and natural disasters, and also just world disasters such as sex slavery. They rescue people out of that. They rescued Ukrainian refugees. And that's another great charity we've been involved in. Any thoughts on that, Ange or Gene?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a sad thing that's happening. The natural disasters seem to be escalating. A couple days, last night there was terrible floods in Libya with 10,000 people missing. But, there's a lot of fatigue for, I think, some of these things. But you're right. I think the human spirit is about, where can we jump in? Where can we help? And I think that's the only place we can focus right now is what can we do to help?
Right. Any thoughts, Gene? Do you cross this in your business at all?
We haven't crossed it so much in our business, but I was reading a headline that we're 12 days in September, and the number of record floods across the planet are just accelerating.
Yeah, but there's no climate change, is there? I mean, who knows what's going on, but something's going on.
It's snowing in Colorado already.
Right, I know. And my son, we talked about my daughter. My son is in Colorado, and he told me that. So let's introduce Gene Godick. Gene is the founder and CEO of G Squared Partners, which provides outsourced CFO, accounting, and finance services, primarily to venture capital-backed companies, and also PE-backed portfolio companies, as well as other emerging growth businesses. G Squared has a team of over 40. They have 70 clients across the country. Prior to founding G Squared, we're going to talk about this, but Gene's career included 2 stints in public accounting as CFO of a public company that he took public and the CEO of an e-commerce company. So good morning, Gene.
Good morning.
Gene, tell us a little bit, you told us offline a little bit, but tell us a little bit about your background and how you found yourself to be an entrepreneur and creating the company that you have today.
Sure. Like a lot of kids graduating from college, I started my career in public accounting, working for two of the large accounting firms, Arthur Andersen and KPMG. Most of the work I did was for venture-backed or family-owned companies, worked on, some M&A transactions as well as public offerings. I got lucky and got an offer from one of my clients to join a Philadelphia-backed venture capital-backed company, and right as the internet bubble was beginning to build in 1998, joined a company called VerticalNet, which wound up becoming one of the darlings of the internet age, and wound up being CFO of a public company for a good number of years. It was a real rapid learning experience because we got to grow, we shrunk, we rebuilt, we did a lot of M&A. So in a period of 5-6 years, I probably got to see every facet of a business in a short period of time.
So you were CFO of VerticalNet.
Correct. So I joined VerticalNet in 1998, right as the internet bubble was starting to really inflate. I started in late June of '98. We were interviewing investment bankers the week I joined, and we thought we were going to go public in the fall of '98, but if people remember back to the summer of '98, we had long-term capital management as well as the Russian debt crisis, which kind of derailed the IPO. We wound up filing the day after Thanksgiving of '98, and we were public in mid-February of '99.
Yeah, they certainly were volatile times in the markets, in the stock market, the capital markets, everything. So yeah, pretty crazy times. So how did you get from there to where you are today?
I was at VerticalNet basically through the December of '06. Left December of '06 to buy a e-commerce and catalog company that was locally based with a partner. We worked on that business for almost 6 years. Didn't make money. Sold the business in December of the summer of 2012, and then I was kind of trying to figure out what do I do with the rest of my life. And a couple of venture capitalists in the Philadelphia area suggested I start this business, and one offered to help me diligence it. Another said, "Hey, we would support you if we have portfolio companies that could use your help," and we were off and running.
So you had instant clients then.
I had clients before I even started.
That's great.
And my goal was to get through the first year without hiring anyone, without being able to replace the income I used to have, and not to write a business plan. Was like my first year goal. Didn't write the business plan. Was able to replace the income, but wound up having to hire someone sooner than my plan because we happened to pick up a $100 million company that needed a lot of work, and couldn't do it just myself.
So that was your first employee?
That was my first employee, who was my good friend John, who he and I worked together at VerticalNet and other places. So
He's still with you today?
He's still with me today. We still have our first client, our first venture-backed client, as well as our first employee.
Particularly in that area of the business, that's amazing. When you think about that.
Yeah, I mean, John and I, we were just kind of joking. We've been working together on and off for 20 years, and we had our 20-year anniversary. I took him out to dinner.
Happy anniversary to you and John.
Exactly.
I happen to know your real life, your other partner.
Yeah, who's been there longer than 20 years.
Yeah, I thought so. I figured that, the math, I figured that had to be. Anyway, so I asked you before what makes your company unique, and there's a few things you mentioned, which I'll let you talk about.
So I think the first thing is there's a lot of companies out there that provide outsourced bookkeeping or outsourced controller or outsourced CFO. We happen to have all three. So most of our clients, we are the entire finance function. So we have about 70 clients. I'd say 50-ish plus. They don't have any internal finance people whatsoever. We do everything from like paying their bills to sending out customer invoices to preparing their annual budget to assisting with getting financing to talking to their investors. So that makes us unique, that we have kind of a one-stop shop or a finance function in a box, whatever analogy you like to use. The second thing is, even though we're about 40 employees, we kind of do some really tough stuff. Besides the outsourced finance, we also do a lot. We'll do a couple of sale readiness projects a year. These companies tend to be not as much venture backed, but they tend to be larger, family-owned businesses, non-institutionally backed, where the company ran fine, didn't need sophisticated finance, but as they get ready to sell, they realize they're missing something. So we had a company, family-owned business up in Long Island. It was a software company. They had a bookkeeper, but they didn't really have the records that you need to go through a sale. We wound up going back and restating the last 4 years, doing all the things they needed to do to get through a quality of earnings. We worked with their investment banker and their lawyer to provide all the information they needed. It wound up being a real success story. I mean, this company got sold for $290 million in an auction. In an auction, one of the large private equity funds bought the company, and we went through quality earnings review by all four of the big four firms, and our numbers held up, and it was a really gratifying process for our team to get to see it. So we tend to do one or two of those projects a year, which makes it fun.
You also mentioned your average tenure with clients is longer than most.
Yeah, I mean, we don't really do interim work. So one of the things that makes us different is when people call us up and say, we fired our CFO or our controller, we need someone for 90 days. That's not really what we do. We're looking for long-term relationships. So a lot of times with venture-backed companies, we're getting, right after they raise money, we get hired. And that relationship can be 2, 3, 5, 7 years. Like I said, we still have our first venture-backed company as a relationship. It's been over 10 years. It'll be 10 years this year. And so, we pride ourselves on the longevity of being there day in, day out with our clients for both good news and bad news.
I'm going to tee up Ange for a question, but your staff of 40, some are accountants, I imagine.
They're all are.
Everybody.
All
Okay.
All of our client-facing people. So, one of the things that also makes us unique is we don't have 1099 employees. So, if you look at our company, of the 40-ish people that are onshore today, all but 4 of them started their career here. So, the way we kind of staff the business is we have people at the associate, senior associate, director, and then managing director level. All the managing directors and one of our senior directors started their career somewhere else. But everyone else in the company has been with the company, some of them as many as 8 years, but they've all started their career here.
So I have to ask you something about that, because yesterday I was with a partner of accounting firm. They're having miserable time finding accountants, people that want to work the kind of hours and tax seasons and audit and all that. And it sounds like you're not really having that issue. Are these people that don't want to be in the traditional accounting world? Is that part of what's going on?
So what makes us different from public accounting is, I believe public accounting made a tragic mistake after Enron and decided that you needed to go have a master's degree and 150 credits to become a CPA. And I think that is one of the many things that acts as a deterrent to joining public accounting. And so we don't require 150 credits. We want people to have their traditional 4-year degree. Like what our process for screening and interviewing is we like kids with good grades that come in that are personable. When we bring them in for probably a 3 to 4 hour interview, they get to go to lunch, spend a large chunk of the day with us, and see we like to see who they are, and we encourage them that it's like buying shoes. You want to make sure it's a good fit for everyone. And then what we do is we give everyone a test, a take-home exam, which takes about 6 to 8 hours, and we grade the exam. And then if they did well on the in-person part plus the exam, we'll make them an offer. Public accounting is still a great career, but I think for a lot of people, doing tax season or busy season is not appealing. I think the difference between now when I was versus when growing up is someone who had analytical and was acquisitive. There's a lot more opportunities, whether it's data analytics or finance, than existed, 20, 30, 40 years ago. And so people with the same skill sets have a lot more choices than they did then, which is making accounting have to figure out how to compete better with the newer professions.
That's great answer. And he mentioned that he alluded to company culture, which I would think sets you up, Ange.
Yeah. Well, I have a couple questions now based on that last thing you just mentioned there, Gene. And I'll kind of lob it out there. We'll take a break, and then if you don't mind, we'll come back. And a couple of things I'd love to know, though, is you're talking about things that are near and dear to my heart. Because my career, I joined an executive search global firm around the same time that you started out, and so I've built, from a talent perspective, executives within venture-backed companies and helped grow significant family companies. So I love that space. And I'm really interested in how you identify, you talked offline about what makes you really different and unique in that you really understand the problems of the owners and what they're struggling with truly, other than just the dollars and cents. So I'm curious about how you identify that you see that today versus maybe back in the beginning in the early 90s. What, if anything, has changed in terms of what their needs are? What are some of the challenges that you're identifying, and how have you, it seems like that plus the way that you've hired and developed people in your company really launches them to have a career with you versus just a job. So those are 2 points. I would love to, why don't we take a break, because it's kind of a 2-part long question, and we'll come back from there if that kind of makes sense.
Are you feeling helpless watching a loved one struggle with addiction? You don't have to face it alone, and you don't have to wait for rock bottom. Family First Intervention is the industry leader in intervention services and family counseling, support, and recovery. They understand the impact of addiction on families. It's not just about the substance user, it's about the family too. Their team is there to help you navigate through the challenges and find resolution. At Family First Intervention, they focus on empowering the entire family system. Their expert team will guide you through the process, offering support and understanding every step of the way. No more fear or uncertainty. Take control and create positive change. Don't wait for permission to ask for help. Your family's well-being is the priority. Call 1-888-316-5950 or visit family-intervention.com and take the first step towards healing today. Change is possible. They can help.
We're back on Founders Forum, and Ange was just getting into an interesting conversation with our guest today, Gene Godick. So let's do it.
Yeah, so just to kind of recap, would love to find out, what is your process? You're getting to know a new client. You obviously have long tenured clients, but as you're working with them, are you seeing them evolve? What, if anything, are they struggling with that might be different today than 20 years ago? And then how does that impact sort of the way that you retain your own people, and how do they respond to the needs of the client?
Sure. It's a fascinating question. I think the world moves a lot faster. Like the amount of money it requires to, in some ways, it's to get to certain revenue levels is probably less. Venture is kind of really, particularly, we work with a lot of software as a service or SaaS businesses, and so those businesses become really metricized, if you will. People know how much, like there's metrics around how much capital should it take you to get to certain levels of annual recurring revenue, and people can measure everything. Everything is much more measured today. On the positive side, talent is a lot more expensive and less available than it was 20, 30 years ago, depending on where things are. But the amount of hardware and computers and investments in fixed assets is a lot different. When I was at VerticalNet, we had a massive computer room with all these servers. Today, that's all in the cloud. That doesn't exist. That's all at Amazon Web Services or Azure. So the world's very different in that way. But I think CEOs' problems are still the same, right? They still need to produce growth. They still need to attract and retain great people. But I think there's a lot. I think there's more pressure that comes from investors. I think the world seems to move faster. How quickly business models can come in and out as technology is evolving quicker. So, but I think people are people. I think the CEOs still have the same challenges of having to attract great people, get new customers, be able to please their investors. I don't think that is. I think businesses are still fundamentally the same. And how that, our culture, I mean, I think our culture is fairly unique for like someone who's doing professional services. It's pretty casual, like we're very casually dressed. If you walk into our office, the first thing you'll see is a gorilla. So we have Gordon Gorilla.
I saw a picture of that.
Who is our mascot and is our chief culture officer. He is the first person you'll see. When we bought him, he was about 6 foot, but he's been shrinking as the stuffing moves from his head to his feet. But he's a part of our culture. We actually bring him to the holiday party, which is kind of funny. But like we're casual like a technology company. I mean, the dress code's very relaxed. We have a ping pong and pool table in the middle of the office. We have happy hours every month. We do quarterly events outside the office. So we tend to be a little more casual, and we want to be like a great place for young people to come and start their career. And if they like what we're doing, hopefully they'll stay a long time.
On board. Mm-hmm.
And stay a long time. And we've been really fortunate that when we look at our director team that we have on board today, 3 of them were hired within 6 months of each other back in 2015. And so, and we've, if you look at our directors, we'll have 7 on January 1st of next year. 6 of them have started their career with us going back to 2015, 2018. And so we can see a pipeline of our senior associates who in the next couple of years will be ready to get to that level. And so being a place where we can attract and hopefully retain the people we want to retain, and then for other people, hopefully we're like a really good launching pad for people to start their career and be able to be ahead as if they went into like a regular business and got their, and just took a regular job, and hopefully we're a springboard to something else.
Well, I think that's a really important point that you bring up, Gene, which is a lot of times people jump on to hiring and then retention, but it sounds like what you're actually doing really, really well is you're developing along the way. And that's, in my almost 30 years in executive search, I can tell you that's very rare that companies understand that the way you retain is giving them opportunities, treating them like humans, giving them runway, and then celebrating that. So good on you.
So back in 2014, we actually sat there and said, well, what do we got to do to be successful? And we actually drew a triangle. And on the triangle, we sat there and said, on the right side of the triangle, what do we got to do? We got to be able to hire, retain, and develop great people. On the bottom of the triangle, we said we need to continue to find better and better ways to drive efficiency, the way we service our clients. And on the left side of the triangle, we have to be able to attract new clients and retain them. And so what we've done is we've actually created committees that are focused on each side of the committee. So we have a career development committee that each quarter has new initiatives to kind of continue to retain. So whether it's training or different things to kind of continue to develop people, we developed a career path. So when we first came in, we didn't really have a career path. We sat there and said, hey, we just want to develop you. But over time, we have people who spend 12, 15 months as associate, then they become an experienced associate, then it's another 12 to 18 months, and then they become a senior associate, which is then probably a 2 to 4 year run, 3 to 4 year run before they're eligible for director. And so working on that career path makes it a lot easier for a young person when they're trying to evaluate where they go. I know what's going to happen to me as I come here.
Believe it or not, we have like 3.5 minutes left. Time flies when you're having fun. Gene, couple quick questions. One is, I'd like to ask you about your 10-year vision. If you looked out 10 years from now, what would happen in your business and or your life, if you'd like to address that, to make sure that were a successful 10-year period in your business and professional life?
So my ultimate vision is for the company to become employee owned. So we'd like to my goal is to create an ESOP where, we've hired a lot of young people who over the ones that were hired in 2015, we can see them as being leaders of the firm. And so we'd like to keep the firm in a perfect world that the firm would remain independent. And so we'd like to create an ESOP where the employees would ultimately over time begin to own the firm. And we've publicly stated that within the business, and obviously very publicly stated on the radio. But our goal is for it to be an employee-owned company as quickly as we're ready when we hit certain financial metrics.
And that also assists you probably in your personal vision as well.
Correct. I mean, it allows me for an exit. It also allows me to decide when I leave as opposed to someone else deciding when I leave.
Gotcha. So speaking of which, your legacy, that sounds like that would be part of your legacy, this company-owned, employee-owned company. What else would you like to see as part of that?
I mean, I love the fact that we help entrepreneurs grow their business. I mean, for a lot of them, we're not going to be there forever. We're an important stop in the beginning. I mean, we have a couple of clients that were with us 4, 5, 6 years and have grown on. Like, I just got an email from one of our clients, their general counsel, who said, "Hey, we're now out raising another round of capital." And when they left us, they were about a $25 million business. They started with us when they were about $1 million business. They're now raising a Series E round of capital, and so my guess is that company's worth probably somewhere between $300 and $500 million would be my bet. And so, we were there for a couple of train stops, but we have a number of those companies that are out there that we serviced for 3, 5, 6 years that grow us. And, one day I want to be able to sit there and say, you see all those companies there, that block of companies, we were there, we helped them grow. And so if you think about it, for a lot of people, we're going to help them build their careers, and then we'll have clients where we help them really grow their business. And I think, from my point of view, that'd be something to be really proud of.
Last question, and we've got about a half a minute, but if you could speak to your younger self, what advice would you give you?
So don't sweat the small stuff.
Yeah.
Like a lot of things that I worried about, which I thought were so important then, which I obsessed over, probably weren't that important in the grand scheme of things. I mean, one of the things that we have at G Square is we have a mentor system, and one of my mentees, she obsesses over small stuff, and one of our goals this quarter is to stop sweating as many of the small things as she does.
That's great advice. It's something
we all need to remember that.
We all need to remind ourselves about that. And I think that wraps up our show for today. Gene, it's been a lot of fun. Great to have you here.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Gene.
And Godspeed. Keep it going.